Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I am back with hopefully a helpful video for you guys. I'm going to be talking about how to manipulate printables to work for how you need them. Oftentimes printable sheets, have a mixed bag of elements, and maybe you're not wanting to print all of those elements at once. If you're like me, you're saving money on clear sticker paper because it's not cheap. So you want to kind of create your own printable pages, scale things differently, maybe create your own coordinating elements that go with the printables. And so I'm going to be showing you that here in a minute. I'll take you over to my computer and show you how I do that using a free program. It's easy. I'm going to work you through all the steps, but I want to show you how I've been using printables because up until now, I haven't used a whole lot of printables. I really like texture and dimension and things like that in my Bible journaling. And printables, you can print them on fabric, you can print them on clear sticker paper, but it's just not super dimensional. It's a little fussy. I usually have plenty of other things to work with, but for this particular way of using them, they were perfect. So I was very generously gifted a new growth book from ByTheWell4God, and I have one that I use for my sermon notes, Bible study notes, Sunday school, things like that. So I decided to dedicate this one solely to ByTheWell4God devotional kits. And I wish that I had been working through the kits in this way all along. I have gotten so much more out of the study this way. I have been taking so many notes. I'm already like 6 days through the devotional. It has just been it's been revolutionary to how I work through these kits. So I will still create Bible journaling entries. I'll be doing like prayer journaling and things like that. But oftentimes I like to really dig in and look up commentary and word studies and quotes and things like that. And they do have the traveler's notebooks that you can work in, but I needed something a little bit bigger. I needed more space. So you don't have to have a growth book. You could use the printables in whatever. You could do this on your Bible journaling pages. You can do it in a regular line notebook or the traveler's notebooks. But as I was starting, what I was doing was each day I was writing out all of the verses that person had wrote for that day. So every verse listed, I was writing out the entire verse and then going and looking up commentary for those verses, primarily from my study Bible, from my John MacArthur study Bible, but then also commentary from other people. I was doing word studies as well. And I was starting this out in a regular traveler's notebook with just a black pen, and it was overwhelming. Like I could not distinguish between the verses, the notes, it was just like all black pen, scribbly writing everywhere. It was a mess. So I thought, well, I need to break things up with some color. I don't want to get crazy in here. I don't want to paint in here. I don't want to do anything like that. But I do need to kind of break things up just for my eye so that I can easily distinguish the difference between things. And so that's where printables came in. So I sat down and started to use the stickers from the release, and those are great. I have been using those, but found that I was quickly going to use up the tile numbers. There just wasn't enough to do all of the verse addresses. So I'm like, well, I need to create some numbers. And so that's kind of what kicked this off. And so I brought in the printables from ByTheWell4God, and they have a set of alphas, but they're just like the sheet of alphas, like this. So this is how they are on the printable. And so I needed to show you how to take apart the printable to create words out of those alphas, to create custom numbers, things like that. So I'll be showing you that here in a second on my computer. So I went through and created day headers. I'll come back in and add the title for that day as well. I scaled down. This month had these little postmarks with the author. So I shrunk them. There's 2 separate pages of the people. I shrunk it to 2 to 1 page, so they're a little bit smaller. And then I wanted a bunch of icons. And so on those printable sheets, that's a mixed bag. It's like icons and the alphas and everything on one page. And so I need to separate all that out and also scale things down so that it wasn't taking a lot of space up in my journal. So I'll show you how I scale those down, create sheets. So basically you just have sheets of icons that then you can use as you do your notes. So then I have, I can distinguish what are MacArthur's notes, which ones are different quotes. For the verse addresses, I wanted the colors to match. So I'll show you how to create a custom color palette so you can create your own using whatever font that you want, but then having it color match the kit that you're working through. And then right here, I wanted to do word studies. Now they do have I'll talk about this here in a second, but they do have the flashcards and you can use these for your word studies. And I do use these words for my word study, but I didn't want to add these directly into my notebook because this is going to get bulky. Even though it's not super thick cardstock, I don't want a lot of bulk in this notebook, but I wanted an easy way to have the word without just writing it. I want to be able to look at this and know right away that that's a word study. So I created my own word stickers, and this was just using a font, but then I filled it with one of the digital papers. So this is a great way to use those digital papers. Yes, you can print them out and use them like regular paper, but I actually use them to fill the alphabet. So this is that black floral on the brown background as the fill for these words. So I went ahead and made all of the words for the word studies I want to do. I did add a little bit of stamping, but really it's very, very simple now for me to sit down and go through the day and just focus on the study and have everything broken apart. And so I stole Taryn, Wonderfully Made Handcrafting. She showed this idea on Instagram that she created a whole bunch of file folders using the new specimen die from Tim Holtz. I'll link that down below. I just added a number for each day, 1 through 14. And then in these folders, what I have added, I'll take this one out as an example here. I just have everything cut and ready to go. So I have the day number for that day of the devotional. I have the, author. I didn't have 2 authors in there, so I'll have to fix that. But the author of that day, the words that I'm going to do word studies on, those are already cut out and in there. And then all of the verse addresses. So I went ahead and created all these at once on one page, and then I cut them out and put those ones in that folder. So then all I have to do is use the clear alphabet stickers, which this was something that I hoard. I have tons and tons and tons of these. I very rarely use up the entire sheet of clear stickers. And so this has been a very great way to actually use these stickers for me. So now I can just put the book of the Bible and then the verse address. And then I have the cards because once I do my Bible journaling, I may use these for my Bible journaling entries. Some of the days, spilling everything, have the full verse cards that come in the devotional kit. I've put those in there if there's a particular day that they go with. And then that way when I sit down to study, I just have to pull out that day's folder. I've got everything that I need, all the elements I need, and then I can just sit with my Bible and spend time studying. So hopefully that kind of helps you with a flow for your study. But let me go ahead and take you over to my computer, and I'm going to walk you through step by step with a free program how to customize your printables so that they work for what you need them to. All right, so I'm working in the Silhouette Studio program. This is the designer program that goes along with the Silhouette cutting machines, but you don't need the cutting machine to use this program. I do have the designer edition that's a paid for edition that has some added tools, but you just need the basic free edition to do what I'm doing today. So here's a look at the 2 pages that we will be creating together using the digital printables from ByTheWell4God. I have the freebies that come with the kit as well as the add-on set of digitals that you can purchase. So I'm starting with a blank canvas, and we're going to bring in our files that we will be using here. So I have them in a separate folder, and I'm just dragging and dropping them as PDFs right onto here. And so these are the 2 pages we'll be using for this first page. I like to orient things just so that it's easier for me. You don't have to rotate it, but I do. So we need to separate out these letters. So we're going to come over to the trace panel. You're going to hit select trace area, and then you're going to click and drag around the item that you want to separate. So I'm going to start with spelling out the word day. So I need a D-A-Y. I'm going to bump up the threshold until the letter is completely covered in yellow. And then the despeckle threshold removes any little speckles, like the tail of that A next to it that I don't want. And then I'll hit trace. I'm going to do this several times through this video. Again, select trace area, drag and select the letter that I want, adjust the threshold. You want a nice smooth yellow cover over the element that you are separating out. I don't need to despeckle that, and then trace. And when I hit trace, you can see it's adding a red cut line basically around that letter. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this in this video. This is the first way. Again, bumping up the threshold, the despeckle will remove the arm of that other Y, and trace. And you're just going to have to adjust the threshold to what works for the element that you're doing. So I'm going to select everything. So I'm clicking off the page, dragging and highlighting everything. You can see I have all 3 letters highlighted as well as the main page highlighted. And I'm going to come over here to the modify panel. And I'm going to come to crop, and that's going to crop out everything else but those 3 letters. So now they have been isolated. You could do the entire set of letters all at once if you needed all the letters, but I only needed these 3 specific ones. Now I have those little blue guidelines. I think those are unique to the designer edition, but it's pretty easy to get everything lined up and next to each other. So then I highlighted all of those, and then Control G or Command G groups them all together, so they're no longer individual elements. And so now I need the numbers. So once again, we're going to separate out some numbers. So we're going to come to the trace panel, select trace area, drag and highlight everything that you want to separate. And this time I'm going to do a big chunk all together. And it's anything that's in the gray area is what's going to be highlighted. So I'm just adjusting that. Again, adjust the threshold. I'm not too worried about the branding in the right-hand corner there because we're going to get rid of that. I do start to kind of see if I can get rid of it with the despeckle, but I'm losing some other elements. So I decide to just ignore it, and we'll get rid of it here in a second. Hit trace. And trace also is giving you cut lines. So if you have a cutting machine, now it's created those cut lines, so it will actually cut out around those numbers if you want to use that feature. But I'm going to hit selected everything, hit crop. And now I can kind of delete any elements that I don't need by clicking and dragging to highlight them. I don't need the punctuations. I can delete those. And now I have all these little individual numbers that I can line up with the word day. So I'm going to bring up the number 1, position it where I want it, and then I'm going to group this together. So I'm going to click and drag, possibly, yes, click and drag over all of them, Control G or Command G to group those together. And now we're going to duplicate this. So we're going to come over to this one here, the replicate panel. And there's a couple different options. I'm going to do this one here where it's the down column. So it's just replicating them downwards, but you also have them replicating horizontally also in different numbers. I'm going to do 14 days. So I've gone ahead and done 5. And I'm going to add a little bit of space between these just to make it easier when I cut them on the sticker sheet. I need to give myself some room to, fit my scissors in there. So I'm just kind of separating it. I'm just eyeballing it. I'm not worried about this being perfectly, even and things like that. And then I think I'm adjusting it just a little bit more, but I'm going to then grab all of these together. These 5 day ones, once I get them adjusted, there we go. I'm going to highlight all of those, Control C or Command C to copy, and then Control V or Command V to paste. And I'm just going to do it that way. When you use the replicate row, it smushes them all close together, and it was just a little tedious to separate them out. So that worked just fine for me. Deleted one of the days, so I only have 14 days. Well, now I have a whole bunch of day ones. So now I need to ungroup these to make them individual elements. So I'm going to highlight them all, right click, and then go to ungroup. Now this has broken it into a day section and then that number 1 element. So now I can swap those numbers out for the appropriate days, and I'm just dragging them up there. Again, I think those blue ruler tools that are showing up on there are unique to designer edition. So those are kind of snapping the number into place and aligning things. There is an align tool above the replicate panel on the right hand side there that you can utilize that if you want it, to be a certain way, but you can just eyeball it. It does not have to be perfect. You can also leave these as individual elements and just cut them out yourself if you wanted to, but I wanted them all together. So there you can see I've already placed them day 1 through 14 and have all of my days, different colors, ready to go. as one sticker that I can then cut out and stick down on the page. So now we're going to work on the icons. So I'm going to get rid of this just for the sake of the video. I'm going to bring in the page that has the different icons on it. This is from the freebies that come with the kit when you order the kit. And this is the other way to separate things. So I am again going to use the trace panel, select trace area, and drag it over those elements that I want. And then I'm going to increase the threshold so that they're covered in yellow. There are some areas that won't cover just because they're, white or clear areas in the element. And then if I go to trace and detach, this is just going to detach those elements from the page. Now, depending on the element, depending on how you're going to use it, one way may be better than use the other one. So you may just need to experiment whether you do the trace with the cut line and crop it, or use the trace and detach feature. It just depends. You can use either or, but sometimes one will work better than the other depending on the element. Usually depending on if there's a lot of white space or things like that. So real quick, I just kind of scaled things down. I use the grid on the mat there just to kind of eyeball the size. And then I'm going to go ahead and replicate these a whole bunch. These ones I don't need to be as spaced apart. They're pretty easy to cut out. So I'm leaving some of them pretty close and just creating a ton of them. And so you could do this with any element. It doesn't necessarily have to be icons. Maybe it's the florals, maybe it's the markers, maybe it's the letters. You need a whole bunch of letters, a whole bunch of numbers, whatever it might be. And then I can customize and create my own sheet. And now I've maximized my clear sticker paper. So now this is the custom page. This is really utilizing your digitals to the max, getting the most out of them. So we're going to start with the customized filled words. So I'm going to grab the font or type tool, type out a word. I'm going to select that, and then I'm actually using a font that I've purchased, but you can change the font in the font panel on that main page as well. But I'm coming up to my font folder and pulling the LD Type Cut. This is a font that I bought from the Silhouette store, and it's just this fun kind of typewriter font. I'm going to blow this up just so you can see what I'm doing, but you can see on the right-hand side there's a whole bunch of fonts, so you can use really whatever font you want. And if I scroll in, you can see that there is a pattern filled in those words. And it's a little bit hard to see with this pattern, but it's actually one of the papers. So we need to create a pattern library to be able to fill this. So first off, they need to be JPEGs. So I'm going to find the pattern paper here. This is the pattern paper. And when you download them, they're PDFs. Now, when I open that PDF, I pay for Adobe products, so I'm able to just save as a JPEG. I'm not sure that you can do that with the free Adobe. You can search on the internet. There are lots of PDF to JPEG converters, and then you just upload the file and it converts it to a JPEG for you. But here I'm just going to save as type JPEG, and then save it. So that's converting the file from a PDF to a JPEG. It's a lot of fanciness behind the scenes, but really we're just making it a photo. So now you can see it has a different icon. This is the JPEG. When you open it, it opens it like a photo. It needs to be in the JPEG format for this process to work. So now we're going to load JPEGs into our library. So if we come up to library, you're going to come down to your patterns folder. This is a folder that's already in the program. And so these are all the different patterns that I have loaded. These are all JPEGs. I've already created a ByTheWell folder. And so you can see I've already gone ahead and dropped in the different papers. But basically, you're just going to drag and drop that JPEG into this folder. And this is where it's going to pull the fill patterns from. So we need to make sure we have those loaded into your pattern folder. And then now when you select the word and come over to the fill panel, these are all your options for colorizing your text or items. So you have the option of a solid color, a gradient, or a fill pattern. So here's all my patterns. I'm going to scroll down to that folder of papers from ByTheWell4God, and then I can just click on it and it fills in. But you can see it's a little a little janky. So we're gonna come down to the advanced options, and here's where you can manipulate with the scale of the pattern. You can move the pattern around with pan pattern and fill it to how you want it to look. So now I've got that all filled in. Now you can see there is a red line around that. That's the cut line. That line does not print, but if you want a line to print, you're going to come over to the line style, and on the color, you're going to pick whatever color you want, and then you need to bump up the thickness. If the thickness is 0, even though it looks black on screen, it won't print. So you need to bump up the thickness to however thick you want that line if you want a line around your letters. But if you don't mess with that, that red initial line won't print. That's just telling the program that that's a cut line, but we're not cutting, we're just gonna print, so you can kind of ignore that. If you come over to the textile here, you can change the font, you can change the character spacing to squish things together. I would suggest doing all of those kinds of edits before you fill it with the pattern. Once you've filled it with the pattern, I've found that the program does kind of bog down a little bit when you start manipulating the fonts. So just do that as your last step. So next we're going to work on these custom colors. We're going to create a color palette. Now please excuse noise in the background. I've got everybody home and I've recorded this like 10 times. We're just going to power through the dishes being done. So I'm going to create a custom color palette. And so I want it to match the printables. So I'm going to bring a printable page into this page, this file that I have open here. I'm trying to remember which one. This is the one that I want here with the solid colored letters. And this is we're just going to use as a reference. So it doesn't matter what it is, just wherever you want to pull your colors from. And then we're going to come over to that fill panel once again. And here I've created a custom palette. So in this empty box, you can name your palette. I'm just going to name it for the video because I will come back and delete this since I already have the panel. Hit the plus sign, and that's going to start out your panel. So you're going to come up to the eyedropper tool that's in that fill panel, and then you'll hover over the color that you want to select. So I'm just going to pick a red area on this page. You can see that box is red now. And then we're going to go down and hit that plus sign, and it's going to add that color into that palette. Again, pick up the eyedropper, move on to one of the aqua colors, click on that, make sure that that's aqua in that box, and then plus, and that's going to add it to our palette. And so now you've got that palette saved. So when you come back in here throughout the month and maybe you want to create some custom shapes or something like that, more text, letters, whatever it is, you've got those colors already saved and everything's going to be cohesive to go with the kit. So now I can again grab that type tool, type out, whatever it is. I'll put a verse here, and then I'm going to select that. I'm going to change it to a font that coordinates with the rest of the font. So again, that LD type cut font. And then I want to make sure I've selected that. I'm going to come over to the fill panel, and then I can fill it with those custom colors just by clicking. And that you can see now is going to be perfectly coordinated with everything else in the printables. I'm going to do no line, which is this little like white and gray hash mark box, has no line on it. So then you can see you can create titles, you can create words. If you don't have a typewriter, you could, create like a type font and type things out and have it colorized to match your kit. So this is just another way to use the printables to their max, customize them so you're not wasting your precious sticker paper. All right, so I hope that was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down below. I do acknowledge those, respond to questions, things like that. So please leave those questions down below for me. Check out the description box below the video for links to any of the products that I mentioned today. Give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful, if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.